Rev up your engines. Okay, here's an interesting problem. This Toyota Avalon has about 300,000 miles on it, and it has the P0171 running to lean code on bank 1. It's had that code for the last 10 years and 200,000 miles of driving, and it still runs okay. So, what's up? Well, we're going to figure this one out. Now, as I can see here, it has some fancy headers on it. Now, he did have the lean code before those were put on. Mind you, it was not all that soon. They've been on there almost 10 years too. And it's still got the lean code, even though it runs decent. Of course, like myself, he doesn't live in Tennessee, but he lives in Kentucky. And neither states do emission testing, so la-ti-da. That's why he's been driving it 10 years this way. But he wants to try to figure out why it's tripping that code. The mechanics look at it, but look, it took me 1 second to figure out what the problem is. Look. It's supposed to be a nut and a bolt in there. We'll have to fix that later and find one. But that has nothing to do with the lean code. Now, when you're running too lean on one cylinder, on one bank of cylinders, there's a zillion things it can be. It can be a lack of fuel. It can be too much air from a vacuum leak. It can be a bad MAF sensor. It can be a computer not pulsing the injectors. A zillion things. So, he's had a bunch of guys try different things, vacuum hoses, none of it fixed. So, we're going to go straight into the most logical thing, and that is analyzing the data first instead of guessing. So we're going to go fancy scan tool all the way here. We get on my think car. And we'll do intelligent diagnosis. Here we go. It's a 99, so I have to manually put the VIN in. The old ones won't read VINs. And it is a Toyota. It's going to be a lot slower on these old ones. We will do diagnosis. And we'll do engine. We'll look if there's any kind of codes. We know there's one code. Always check them. You never know. Things can come, things can go. It'll give me historical codes. It'll give me everything. These old cars, even these new machines are going to go slow because they've got relatively slow speeds on their computers. Here we go. We'll do a smart scan of everything. And we're off to the races. This goes through the whole system. This ain't bad. This is ECM, and we're going to get that code for sure. There it is, system 2 lean. Curiosity, let's see when it occurred. There's the data for the freeze frame, so let's see. It only had a tiny load on it. The engine was idling. It was only going 789 RPM, and it was going 0 miles an hour. It's tripping its code when it's doing nothing, when it's just idling. That's the most critical. If the engine doesn't run perfect at idle, it'll trip that code. Even a tiny little vacuum leak could do it. And then when you're going down the highway, it doesn't matter. But when you're idling at 789 RPM, anything off is going to make it trip that code. So it's a very minor thing that's doing it. So let's look at the data. We'll read the data stream here. All right, let's start looking at it. We got 8 pages. Some of them will have 48 pages, but we'll have to deal with what we have. All right, this is the load when it's idling, when it acted up before. It's a 6-cylinder. You can see all 4, 5, 6, 0 misfires. So it's not misfiring. I can feel it rolling a little, but it's not a misfire. Now, as we're going to watch the ignition advance, and look, it's 23, 20 and a half, 22 and a half, and this is all at an idle. 24 and a half, 25 degrees. Now it's 19 and a half. Now, this is an old Toyota. It's got a rubber timing belt. Now, to me, that explains the rolling idle. I can feel it jiggle a little when it's rolling. Now, it's not misfiring. You can see it has 0 misfires. It's got a rolling idle. And that's because the timing is probably off a tooth or something. These are very hard to do correctly because the cam on the back side, you can barely see it unless you have a Toyota locking tool when you change the timing belt. Generally, when you tighten it up and the tensioner goes up, that stupid belt on the back one will snap one notch and you'll be off. So the timing is somewhat off on this, gives it a rolling idle. But he had that lean code long before that. The belt was changed only like 8 or 10,000 miles ago. So there's still the lean code that he's had for 10 years. Well, I can tell why it's acting up at an idle on top of the timing belt. Check this out. Here's the airflow rate from the mass airflow sensor. Look, it's 2.95 grams a second, 2.97, but it starts jumping all over the place. It was jumping up. Now it's 3.1 grams per second. You can see now it's 3.35. Now, what it's telling is, it's saying that's the flow of air coming into the engine. At 3.5 or 2 point whatever, that's a massive differential. When it gets up to 3.5, it's saying a lot more air is coming in. Guess what happens when you have a lot more air in? you get a lean code. And consequently, when it goes too low, it'll go a rich code because it says there's less air coming in. So to confuse the computer to the opposite direction. But in this case, it's giving the wrong reading. It's saying too much air is coming in, so it just confuses the whole computer. I mean, check it out. It's bouncing all over the place. 4.26 now. There's no way it can bounce around that much. Here is the problem with this particular car. It runs good enough. It doesn't particularly eat up a lot of gas or anything. Of course, if you run a little leaner, you'll get a little bit better gas mileage, actually. But here's the main problem with this car. Here's the mass airflow sensor. The problem is, this car is so old, 99, you can't get the original equipment one. He got a new sensor, but it's a Delphi sensor. It's an American sensor. This is a Japanese car. I don't ever advise swapping the stuff out. Heck, the way things are going in this country, I wouldn't even use Delphi on GM. They got so much quality control of their stuff. It runs good enough. It's not horrible. It's been running lean for 10 years. Now, here's the interesting thing. He's changed this thing out, even under warranty. The warranty's only 1 year. And the last time it went out, it was out of warranty. So, this one is still in warranty. He's gonna get another one and put it in. Giving wrong data. Here's the problem though. It's a Delphi. They'll warranty it. They'll give him another Delphi. Who's to say that it's ever gonna equilibrate with this car? Those sensors are so ultra sensitive. The software in them, they're measuring grams of air flowing through them. Everything has to be perfect. And my experience is, aftermarket, they're never perfect on those things. Now the problem with this is, it's so old, being a 99, let's say it was somewhat newer, I'd just say, go to a junkyard. On Toyotas, they generally last a really long time, and you could try a used one. I had a guy do that when I was in Rhode Island. He wanted a bunch of money places, even for the Chinese versions. He went to a junkyard, got one for 25 bucks. We put it in his car, and then his wife's car passed inspections. He needed it in Rhode Island because they do emissions testing, and it passed the emissions. Now he, on the other hand, lives in Kentucky. He doesn't need it, but he's paid for the sensor. He might as well get another one under warranty. He can show him this video when it comes out, you know, and say, look, the data coming out of this thing is squirrely as can be. It's not working correctly. But from my standpoint, hey, it's going to be another Delphi, and unless they can find the original equipment one, which I couldn't even find for one of these things, you're kind of stuck there. And that's the problem with really old cars that most people don't understand. There's a myth going on that car manufacturers have to make car parts for so many years, 10 years or whatever. That's a total myth. There is no such law in the United States. Now, it really wouldn't apply to this because it's a 99. It's well over 10 years old. But the law is that while the cars are under warranty, the dealership has to provide parts to fix them. Now, it doesn't even say they have to make the part. If they buy them somewhere else, as long as they can get them and repair them under warranty, that's what the law is. So theoretically, they could build cars and not make any spare parts for them. And then when they break, if they can find a part somewhere else, say they buy it, Toyota, a lot of their parts they get from a third party. They don't make their own air conditioning systems, so they buy them from that company. So they can get parts in those companies, but there's no law that says they have to make any parts for the cars for any period of time. They just have them available so they can be repaired only while they're under warranty. So when you get something like this, it's kind of an oddball. You're really kind of stuck because you may never be able to find the right part. I had a customer with a Toyota Supra, had the same problem, and I started to look, but it was even older than this. It was the 70s. I couldn't find any parts for it except on eBay and stuff. So he went and got a part on eBay and gave it to me, and I took it apart, and it was all covered with rust. It had come out of a flooded car, you know, a computer that came out of a flooded car full of rust. You know it's going to be no good. It was spray painted, so it looked good on the outside, but that's the problem when you get to really older cars. Now, in his case, it's not a death sentence. It runs good enough, and he'll get another one, but so far, he's tried 10 different mass airflow sensors. They were all different brands. Well, not all of them, but they were different brands, and none of them have lasted because he can't get the original one. They don't make it anymore. I mean, it runs good enough. He's going to swap it out again, but that's something that you got to be leery of if you're getting an old car, even a Toyota. There comes a point when getting the actual parts can become almost impossible because nobody makes them anymore. Like I say, by law, Toyota doesn't have to make them. Nobody has to make them. And this is an Avalon, and it is a mass airflow sensor of a really old design that they haven't used for quite some time. It's tripping this code at an idle, only at the idle. So When you're going roaring down the highway, that sensor's working okay, but when you're idling, it is off. And that's why it's kind of hard to start too. Sometimes it's hard to start because it's not getting the right air-fuel ratio when the engine has to be started up. But once you rev it up and go, it goes perfectly fine. He's gonna try another one, but I mean, he's already gone through 10. What are the odds that the 11th one is gonna fix it permanently? I would say slim to none. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.